a first year student on the Marine Science Foundation degree, and this will be my bid. It's a survey of the estuarine dynamics of the Truro River below the Truro Barrage. Ever since the barrage was put in, the river narrowed at one point, so it has like a neck now, and obviously that affects the conditions of the river further downstream, the dynamics of the river, and as the dynamics of the river have changed, so has sort of conditions further down to do with deposition and such, and also the ecosystem of the river, as sort of habitats have changed. And I would like to survey sort of the conditions of the river below, and hopefully draw some conclusions as to how that sort of affected sort of the overall area sort of below the stream in terms of habitats, ecosystems, and the general conditions of flow rates and things, velocities.
Okay. Is this the?
So the people that
Forgive me, I don't know an awful lot about it. Is this the one that Henry VIII put in?
No, it was. It's the Truro Barrage. It's a form of hard flood defence. It was put in. There was lots of flooding in Truro in 1988, and it was put in as a result of that, as a form of flood defence scheme. And I believe it was put in early 2000, but I haven't been able to find a specific date yet. So.
Have you talked to the Environment Agency, because they're obviously involved in flood defence?
Yeah, I haven't talked to anyone at this point, but yes, I will do.
Is the data available from beforehand for you to compare to?
Well,
What's
I
your
would have thought
baseline?
so. Like, I don't have that information at the moment. I haven't been able to look into it in the time we've had to put this together. But I believe that someone at the council would have had to do all that data, get it collected all together, in order to summarise and put before they put the barrage in. Sort of a feasibility plan or something like that. So I would have thought it would be all there. However,
Because obviously this isn't one of the projects that we gave you on the list,
I know.
not specifically, and that's absolutely fine, but the one requirement that if you're picking your own project is that you've got a good background in it, because obviously we haven't, that's why we haven't put it on the list.
Yeah, I know, because obviously it would rely on sort of having a comparison of before and after. And I would
That's
have
what I'm
thought-
really worried about, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I mean, I would believe that there is lots of data there beforehand.
Whether you'll ever find it,
Yeah, that's the case.
Maybe access?
yeah.
Environmental Record Centre? Maybe?
Yeah. Because you actually need a front of that data set, don't you? Because otherwise you're not going to know what you're going to be comparing, are you?
There's a lady you can contact at the council who will certainly be able to direct you to the right way. I know that they upload all of their stuff onto a database today, so it's usually they'll be able to tell you more about. And her name is Philippa Hoskins.
Because aside from the information that the council will have, or any sort of contractor or someone who they previously found to do the work for them, I'm sure there will be sort of data bathymetry charts and avalanche charts. So they would provide some data. Yeah. And I would imagine also there'd be some stuff on sort of current flow. So, I mean, as well as also sort of basic layouts of the riverbed and the shape of that, which could possibly change.
I wouldn't hold your breath on flow.
So didn't we find that the flow on the avalanche charts was wrong?
Yeah. But we come obviously from the harbour side of things perspective, and we have a remit to survey and to look into these things. And I'll tell you now that we're the biggest in the area, and that's not, we don't have time for stuff like that. So Environment Agency will be able to be a best base.
Scale of the bathymetric stuff
I don't
very
think
great either, because the UK Hydrographic Office's charts are really more at sea than they are inland, and they'll be very basic and they may not even have very much detail. And I suspect that particular feature that was put in, given that it caused quite a number of problems that they didn't expect, there might not be quite as much sort of background data and information as you think. It wasn't the greatest success, if it's what I'm thinking.
Oh, wasn't it?
It is. It was a bit of it didn't quite work the way they thought it was going to.
So we were supposed to, can I have a bit of background on it, just for interest?
Yeah, well, I haven't been able to find out that much, to be honest, but it's a form of flood defence. It was put in, it's a barrage, so I think they... The Truro, yeah.
It's a sort of mini version of the one on the Thames.
Okay.
Except I think there was a point where they couldn't get the gates to open and close, which they get silted up more than I thought it was going to. And
Well,
it
it
still
was-
floods in the city centre as well, because they put the wrong diameter of pipes in. So there's actually just as much flooding at certain times. That's what I remember from it when it was.
Okay.
Well, it's not so much the flooding that's interesting.
No,
No,
yeah.
sure, the difference.
You're interested in the difference, which means you've got to have a data set
Before and after.
to go before and after, because and also you've got to narrow that down to compare all of those is too much, and then you would have to think about where you're going to compare it. Are you looking at within Truro and upstream and downstream of the barrage, presumably?
Right, it would probably be below stream. It would be
Right.
below the barrage downstream.
Right.
Because I mean, presumably that channel is dredged because it was the main route up. That was the only problem, but it's prevented vessels going further than they used to. I think.
Yeah, but
I'm not sure whether
I don't
anybody
know.
will do any sort of that scale of survey for the channel.
What, after, so?
And I think the channel, I think it's silted up more as far as I understood it after it had been put in than it was before. There's obviously now, although it's open, it's a natural blockage and it disturbs because of the impact.
Would that just apply?
Um,
Even if the sort of conclusion was
So
sort of
realistically, you're going to get funded.
yes.
Despite the estuarine deposition as well, though, you wouldn't be able to distinguish whether it was the barrage, I would have thought,
Well,
that
yeah.
Or
caused
the
it, or the estuary.
Yeah.
On the fact that the estuary is then not used as much.
It will have had an impact, undoubtedly, whether or not they did an impact statement at the time.
Well, there's been no study since it was put in, I don't think. So.
Okay. Start by talking to Truro Harbour Office, which is part of the council,
Yeah.
because there'll be their harbour master there, either Mark Killenback, Captain Mark Killenback, or Andy Brigden, who runs the whole of the maritime department for the council, both of which will be incredibly familiar with that, and it could be a place to start.
Well, I have to admit that when I drew it up, I was completely unsure of the feasibility of it. So I don't know if it would interest you or whether I'm allowed to present more than one bid, but I do actually have several. I don't know.
You could give me 1 minute on your second best, how's that?
Well, I wasn't sure if it was even sort of within the sort of
Just in case this one isn't
transport authority.
feasible, we'll let you look into that, but what were you thinking if that isn't feasible?
Well, the second one would be a comparative invasive species study. So I know there are already previous bids to do with invasive species in the Falmouth Harbour. And the Falmouth Harbour being predominantly, or it doesn't, a lot of industrial vessels come in, and obviously that's sort of known where invasive species can come in like that. But St Maur's across Carrick Road is much more private, much more involved pleasure vessels. So I suppose the conclusion to the knowledge is already known, but there would be some analysis involving whether the amount of invasives here is expected and to sort of what extent it would be expected. So I mean, that would provide much more data which can be statistically analysed. I
It's a
suppose.
good backup.
You'll definitely need to speak to Mike and Ben, because they both had something very similar to that, and I told them that they had to come up with something that was different. Not different, but they had to look at different aspects. So if you want to do that as backup, that's perfectly fine, but you'll have to find what aspects they're doing and look at a slightly different one again.
What aspects in terms of
You can't all just look at the distribution of invasives, because otherwise you'll have...
even though distribution is
There's
different,
going to be tax on
some sort of hypothesis and everything.
Yes, if yours is looking at a comparison of St Maur's with something like that, then that would be fine. You'll just need to make sure you're talking to them to make sure it does end up being different when it comes to the final.
Well, if all their distribution is localised to Falmouth, surely it would be different anyway.
No, theirs isn't. That's the
Theirs
thing.
isn't.
They are looking at round the estuary, but I think their plans were relatively loose.
Okay.
So they've got the result.
We were chatting to them at the beginning stage.
Okay. Well,
Good luck with it.
Yeah,
You'll go for their money. You can give them
it'll be very interesting if we can get it to work.
Yeah.
Cheers, mate.